Welcome to the Barbell Strikes Back. I'm James McDermott, joined by Miguel Porter. Miguel, you had a big weekend this weekend, didn't you?
Yep. Yeah,
Something new happened.
definitely.
You're still in one piece, I see.
Yeah, nothing popped off, but you
Okay,
know,
that's good for weightlifting. That nothing popped off. No weird aches or pains. So tell everybody what you did.
I went snowboarding for the first time yesterday.
And have you been skiing before? Or is this your first time on the slopes at all?
Nope, I think I went tubing on like hills
Okay,
before. But yeah, this is
regular
my first
sledding.
time doing this type of thing.
Nice. Where was it? Where was it?
We went to Jiminy Peak, so it
Hmm.
was like 45 minutes away.
Okay. And you have definitely the weather and the snow to do it right now.
Yeah, um, it was really cold. It was not like snowing, but it was snowing while we were there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That adds to the vibe of the whole thing.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
going around, there's snow coming. What did you think? What was your impression? Are you now going to be hooked? Do you have a new activity that you're going to buy a board and everything?
No. Um, I mean, it wasn't bad. I would do it again. I don't know if I'd do it again in 2025. Um,
Give it a year or two.
but I mean, yeah, it could have gone the complete opposite way, and I could have been like, "Yep, that was it," and I could
Yeah.
have called it way earlier. But no, it went well. Towards the end there, um, we graduated from the bunny hill at the end, and I see how people hurt themselves very badly.
You can see how it can happen through ego or just the fact of
No,
just
not
doing
even. Yeah. I mean, like I am hurt, I would say. Um I am for sure hurt. I'm not injured, but
it.
I
Mhm.
can see how you can easily injure yourself doing it.
Yeah.
Like my left hand right now is like it hurts pretty bad.
Oh no.
And I mean that's just from like I guess just repetition of like falling
Hmm.
and either catching yourself in front or catching yourself behind, like whatever hand like touches first, just putting weight on that. Like I can see how by the time you make it to the end, if you like overdo it, that it could be bad.
We're gonna have to
My
watch out
left,
for that tomorrow then.
yeah, yeah, it's definitely hurt. My left hip also, just again from like falling and stuff like that. I mean, for anyone who does skiing or snowboarding, like they know that it's mostly like ice and then like powder just on top. So it hurts pretty bad. Like if you're like really falling.
Yeah. I
Um,
snowboarding once and I like the board went under me or like it's like doing a backflip. Like
mm,
I fell on my back with my feet going in the air, head back towards the ice or the slope, and my glasses and the hat I was wearing were down the hill. Like they beat me down there. Like I just had this big wipeout, and I was like, I really hope I find my glasses because this would suck now if it's somewhere out here and I can't find it. But luckily, they just kind of slid down together. So that was my one experience with snowboarding. And getting off of the chairlift was difficult too. How'd you do with that?
Not bad, honestly. Of course, sometimes like you get off and you make it. I think my thing was controlling the like slow down
Hmm.
once you get off. I mean, there were times where I mean the chairlifts were stopped because people were just collapsing right by the chairs.
That was
So
me.
it had to stop. Like it never had to stop for me. Um, I had a few like good ones where I got off and I just stayed standing up, or like I would like bend over and put my hands down to stop myself.
Hmm.
Um, but no, I think I only like fell coming off of it one time.
There's like a buildup. Like as the chair is getting closer to the top of the hill, I remember it being like, okay, now. not
Hmm.
like you're like anticipating when you got to do it. And I feel like probably, I mean, someone who's an expert at snowboarding and skiing probably knows better. Like you have to just go like with it. You can't like it's one of those things where you can't hesitate or think about it. I feel like I probably fell because I either got off it too late, too early, or just tried to jump off it instead of I think you're supposed to just put your
Yeah,
feet
I
down and
mean,
glide, right?
yeah, you're really just supposed to put the one that's strapped in down, and then the other one just on top of the board. But I was just my friend told me to push off of the chair. So I was really just holding onto the chair until like it was pushing me off, and then I would kind of push off and go. Um, so yeah, at least anytime I fell was honestly probably because I had too much speed coming off of it, and I was
Uh-huh.
like fully out of the way of people. I would say that at least. Like there were a couple times where I was getting off, and other people were already just like laying where they fell, and you had to like either stop yourself or figure out a way around them. So yeah.
Isn't it crazy? You have this activity where people are literally flying around, zigzagging everywhere, and there's so many inexperienced people around, like like also falling and just possibly being in the way.
I mean, I was on the bunny hill for most of it, so I think that was part of it. Of like nobody's really like flying down the bunny hill.
Yeah.
So you are just used to like the bodies all around. Um, but then we finished with a couple greens, which I would say like the jump in skill to get to those is extremely high.
The green is the next hill up.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But that's like I wouldn't even say it's the next up. I mean, yes, in terms of like grading, but it's such a big jump going from Bunny Hill to Green. Like now it becomes like a real slope,
Yeah.
and like you're moving fast and it connects to other ones, right? So people are coming off of other ones going extremely fast. Um, so for the most part, it is just like experienced people, at least what I saw. Um, I was definitely the last one we did was like a really long green, just to like cap it off. And I was probably the most inexperienced person there. But I mean, I'm surprised that I even not surprised. I think that was the intent of how I wanted it to go. But to get onto the green, um, just in a few hours of doing it, I was pretty happy with that.
And you can still go quote slow, like you're on the green, but that doesn't mean you're flying down it like some of
Well,
those other people are.
I mean, if you
Or
know
maybe
how to go slow,
okay, yeah, that is true. If you only have one speed,
I was breaking speed records, I think.
hey, there you go.
Like down like if you were to ask me what sport I was doing, it's like downhill snowboarding. Like I was just going full tilt. And at
Nice.
times it felt good, and other times I was like, "Oh, it's cuz I have no control over myself.
Yeah.
I can't even like change directions right now." Other times yeah, it felt good, and then other times I was flipping, and it's been a while as an adult since I've fallen.
Oh, not on purpose.
I mean, like, just how often do you fall? It's this was different. It wasn't like a little trip. It was like at times I was flipping, and like I haven't hit my head in such a long time.
Oh gosh, you hit your head.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm wearing a helmet, but like it's been such a long time since I've fallen and then like felt my head hit.
You had that like bell rung kind of feeling.
No, I mean that's the thing too. I mean, I feel completely fine. In terms of that, they were actually so surprised on how quickly I was getting up as well and just going again. Um, but yeah, it's also like it's kind of fun to look at it that way. As just like adults, there are things there that you just lose over time, and I think part of that is also falling and like getting back up.
Yeah, that's why we do burpees.
That's what I was telling them. Like with all the I said like with all the burpees I do, like it's kind of fine. Just to literally pop yourself back up. It's obviously harder with the snowboard kind of attached to
And
you,
you
but
might be more durable than the average person out there. I mean,
yeah.
just in terms of like just sheer strength, like, like there's that quote, strong people are harder to kill. Well, it's like you're like you might be the strongest person on the mountain, like out there, like which is you don't know unless you test. But I imagine you might be the only person out there that can snatch almost 100 kilos or that
Right.
much weight. So it's like that's got to be worth something, right?
Yeah. I mean, we almost rescheduled because we were supposed to go with another friend, but she couldn't make it this time. And as we left and like while we were doing it, we were talking about how different our pace would be if she was also there.
Mhm.
Just cuz like she's active too and she works out a bunch, but like there were times where I was for sure, and because my friend was the one just like coaching me through it, that we knew it in terms of like, I can just athlete my way through this. I can understand, oh, instead of doing this, I have to move my hips back or like just my one side of my hip back and just working. It's physically exhausting as well. Um, yeah. So I think that's kind of like why I do all this too. Is like I want to be able to go to a mountain and just figure it out to a degree. Like of course I'm not good at all, but being able to like say that I went down like an actual trail was good.
Yeah, now you have experience doing it. Like now, if you hear people talking, you're like, oh, even if you don't have something to contribute to a conversation, you're like, well, I at least have an understanding of what that means. Or maybe
Yeah.
you're training an athlete and you know that they do this all the time. Now you know for sure, like he's going to be falling all the time, or this or that, or different kinds of aches or pains. Like it just helps you in different ways as an athlete and a coach, and just as a person who
Yeah.
experiences life.
Yeah.
That's why it's good to do all these things, and that's kind of like our little theme here of like trying these new experiences. You may not go back to them right away, but you're going to dabble in them, and then now you have the options open. It's a thing on the list. Maybe 3 weeks from now you're bored. Maybe I will go back out to the slopes. Probably not, but
Yeah. No.
the
But
option
yeah.
is there now. So, with your friend was coaching you, so you didn't have a formal lesson like on the bunny hill. You were that's where everybody was kind of learning on the bunny hill.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were on the bunny hill for I would say the first like 3 hours. Um, just going through and I mean, starting from the very beginning, because I've never done it. I maybe looked at one video of like tips and tricks,
The
but like,
Olympics.
yeah, right. But I mean, from like strapping in myself and, just
So you
what
just
direction do I have to face, stuff like that
because
from the very beginning.
I know I took like an official lesson, like they had like an instructor on the bunny hill way back when I did this. So for you, like you went to the resort. They had you fill out a waiver, and they're like, don't do the most hard one right away or anything like that. And then they just gave you the equipment and you're out there. And now it's up to you to be responsible and like practice and not do anything crazy, right? Is that how
Yeah.
essentially it goes?
Yeah. Obviously, they have the option to like pay for a lesson or whatever, but yeah, no, I mean,
So you did the
again,
responsible thing. I wonder how many crazy people must be like, yeah, let's go up to that green or whatever and start
I
going down
mean,
the hill. It
I don't
can't be
know.
often.
I doubt it, honestly. I think people are fairly aware of like danger when it comes to that.
Yeah. You'd
And
hope so.
such like an expensive thing that I don't think that many people would just like go completely without any knowledge of it and like go for something
Yeah.
crazy.
Plus, you're more than likely gonna go with friends
Yeah.
who do have experience, and they're gonna be like, "Hold on, Miguel.
Yeah.
Like it's now my responsibility to make sure you come back in one piece."
Yeah.
So There's it's good that there's some kind of baked in respect for the activity type of thing, you know. So it seems like you could if you wanted to, but you'd have to be willing to pay all that money, go kind of lone wolf, and just go up to an area you don't know and just fly down. Like it does
Right.
seem like I bet it happens. It must happen, um, but probably few and far between.
Hmm.
As someone who like like facilitates an activity, you always wonder about that. Just crazy people out there. Plus, we've experienced crazy people in our activity, and it's just all the ones I've been doing just have been putting that like aspect of respect what you're doing, do it the right way, go through these steps, don't go too fast too soon, type of a deal. So it seems like it's built into skiing in more of the social element of it and the pricing of it, like just
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these things are also access. Like, I think what it is so many guys, because that's what it always is, but like access to weight rooms in like from high school and middle school, and just being able to grab anything and thinking, well, it's there. I can, if it's something that I can load on, it's probably something that I can do
yeah,
or at least try. But like, yeah, with you and your archery and like skiing, it's like either even your like handgun stuff, it's like you can't just grab that anywhere and
no,
be there. Like there's so much that has to happen. Like I can even imagine someone who operates a chairlift and seeing someone who like has no skill try to get on. Like I think that's something that they could probably tell,
yeah.
because even the timing of like, all right, wait here, all right, it just picked up somebody, so you have to go to the point where it says load here. And I think that it's a little bit harder.
That'd be an interesting job, the chairlift guy. Just all the things you see. I wonder if they can slow it down. Like they're like, all right, I'm gonna just slow it down a little bit for this
Yeah,
person. I'm
and
gonna
I
wait for
mean,
that.
yeah, that's why it stops as well, where you can tell that they see a person, and we've definitely seen it slow down when we saw that people in front of us were like fallers, where
Yeah,
they would like get it ready for them and then make sure that they're clear, maybe even stop longer and then go so that we can like not go straight into them.
makes sense. I remember the instructor. He was able to ski up, down, sideways, all over the bunny hill without poles. It's just like he was just on the ice, just moving his legs.
Mm,
And then I I had dropped my poles at one point, and I'm like, well, I'll just do what he did to get over there. Instant fall down, just. And then that was also my preferred way of stopping. Is just to throw my body to the floor because I
yeah.
gave up trying to stop at one point with the skis. The snowboard, I feel like the snowboard was a little easier for some reason. I can't remember why. Um,
Yeah, you have to just use the edge, whatever
yeah,
edge is more comfortable for you. Um, yeah, it's interesting trying to use one edge to stop, and then you kind of do, and then your body just continues down.
yeah, the
Um,
momentum.
yeah, but yeah, it was interesting. It's definitely again another sport where like proprioception is different. Um, like heels and toes, it's like all that you're working on the entire time, and your knees are bent and you have to lean towards one side if you want to go that direction, and your hands and your chest have to be pointed in the direction that you want to go, and it's very unilateral as well, I would say,
Mm.
which is I guess newer for me in terms of like what we're doing currently. I feel like anytime we like do something with our hips in our sport, it's like both sides are working at the same time.
Yeah,
Whereas with this, like maybe one is more forward, one you have to decide to move back, and you're on your heels on one side and your toes on the other, and you're trying to like stop yourself and slow yourself down, and it was interesting.
yeah. It's good to feel out. Those other kind of like not planes, but just like, oh, let me like do athletic movement on like the fringes of my motion
Yeah.
and see what happens. I think it it all leads towards being more athletic in all of it as a whole. Like because if you have to save a lift, you're not going to be where we want to be. You might be more onto one of those balance points that you were just practicing just now. So imagine if you snowboard all the time and you're just used to it. You're like, oh yeah, if I start to lose balance or I start to slide or something, I can fix it this way. Well, now like a little thing goes off in your head. Oh, we'll just fix it, and you just lean. You know how to lean to save and
Right.
rebalance yourself. I mean I don't know if there is any direct actual correlation or something, but like I imagine it can't hurt. Like you
Right.
like back in the day, quote, all those guys, they did everything. They went skiing, they went snowboarding, they skated on rollerblades, and they played golf. They did all these different sports. They were like, what was it, Renaissance men? They were like just
Yeah. Yeah.
balanced and good at everything. And they're like, yeah, let's go do this for today. They weren't like they were specialized, but not so specialized they couldn't also like compete in all of these different things and be really good at it.
Right.
So there's like some benefit to that for sure.
Yeah.
Any other like big takeaways from it, or like lessons learned that for either just as an athlete yourself or even like from a coaching standpoint?
Yeah. I think there it's interesting. Like I got a lot of help and the coaching was great. Um it's just different. Yeah, the way that this has to be done, I think.
Mhm.
Um you really, and I think snowboarding, they were telling me that snowboarding is a little bit harder when you start out. Um because of just like you don't have like the balance of like the poles and stuff like that. But yeah, I was glad I was able to kind of athlete my way through it, and they were able to kind of change the way that they were coaching me based on my responses to things.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm sure like the plan would have been different for someone who isn't currently doing a sport.
Yeah.
Um, and they saw how quickly I was getting up after falling and ready to go again and continuously going. I think they thought that I would have wanted to go home like hours before. Um, but yeah, so yeah, it's interesting. It's one of those things that you have to tailor towards who you're working with and what they're able to deal with. Um, but yeah, I think they did a great job.
That's part of the art of coaching, right? Like, let's say you're going to do an on ramp at the gym and someone comes in and they're like really athletic and picking up on things. Well, you can like, all right, instead of me, going like much slower and like treating it as if someone who has never exercised before. Well, hey, well, let me see if I can get you a toes to bar, an on ramp right now. Like, let's test out this next step, and you can coach them a different way. Um, yeah, there's just like if you're teaching like someone to snatch and they're really getting it from the hip, we don't need to belabor that much. We can get to the floor way faster.
Yeah,
So it's that's just being able to pick up on that, and then the challenging part is being able to do that with the group, like a mixed group, like cater to both ends and everybody in the middle.
yeah,
That's where the real challenge is. Um, so yeah, that's awesome. I have no fencing report because I did not go. I had to reschedule it. Whatever bug or illness has been floating around the gym and that maybe you had, or I don't know where I got it. Don't know where I got it. I started to feel it Wednesday night, where like when like your shoulders are all achy,
yeah,
like it's like up here, and then I started to feel like the chills, and I'm like, well, maybe it's just the cold, but normally I'm fine with the cold. And then later that night, I was like, no, and I had to reschedule all my appointments for Thursday, that one included, because I was like, well, I don't want to go there and be miserable, and I
right,
also don't want to go outside right now because it was kind of like when you're getting sick, there's like high points where you're like, oh, it's not going to be that bad. And
yeah,
then you're like, oh, no, I'm just going to sit here all day. And then maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And then no. So I was like, you know what? I don't want to go there and be miserable and not pay attention and enjoy it. And and also I don't want to be around them and
Right.
be the
Yeah.
person that Plus, there's like I think it's like a lot of kids and everything. So I was like, you know what? Let me just reschedule it. So next next Saturday at 9 a.m. I'll do that one.
Nice.
So it's still on the book. Guy was really cool about it. He's like, no, everybody's always appreciate when you're like, hey, not feeling hot today.
Yeah.
Don't think I should be around. Everyone's like, yes, thank you for doing that,
Hmm.
because a lot of people don't do that. So, um, yeah. So no report there, but it's coming. It's coming. And I did look it up. Apparently, what I gotta ask Justin about this Pirates license thing, because I looked it up and I couldn't find a real thing about it. I saw an article at MIT. They have to do electives, so you can do these electives, and then there's some kind of pirate thing or
Hmm.
certification. But I don't go to MIT, so I don't know how I can make this happen, for me, unless I invent something, which I'm not going to do. So
Hmm.
unless Justin wants to make me if Justin makes me a certificate after I complete the boating and the fencing for the Pirates license, then we can do that. But I'm gonna have to ask him about that because I couldn't find any. As I was sitting around sick, I'm like, let me read up on this, and then I couldn't find anything. I'm like, maybe it's not real after all. I've been had. So yeah, we'll report on that next week.
Hmm.
Do you have any? So far, we've gotten a lot of activities done
Yeah.
this year. Let's see. I did the archery, the handgun. I'm gonna do fencing, um, and then I've got swimming and CrossFit coming up. But I mean, we can't really count CrossFit. Um, but and then what have you done for your?
Yeah. I've done silks, which I plan on doing again next week,
Mhm.
hopefully, and then yeah, snowboarding, and then the dance that I've been doing. So
So yeah, we've got it's like 8 different sports. This will be an interesting thing at the end of the year. Have like a nice look at all these sports that were done, and then maybe kind of just I guess like a lesson from each of them, or something.
right.
But look at that, we're going to be so well rounded, so well versed on skills. If we have to swim away from danger or fight someone with a sword, we are ready. Or go down a this actually kind of sounds like secret agent training, like
Yeah. Yeah.
the snowboarding, the skiing, the combat elements, the swimming. Like we're kind of doing secret agent training. Little did people know we were actually involved in a clandestine organization.
Yeah.
All right, so we will continue to do that. Awesome. Everything else, you finished off January very strongly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
With all your goals.
I'd say so.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I had to make up one day as for my core 365 because on Thursday I just didn't do it. I was like, we're not. Although I did force myself to do my steps.
Nice.
Those were hard steps because it was about like 6 o'clock at night, and I'm like, I'm not gonna not do this. So I'm just walking around my apartment for 7,000 steps. That totally sucked. But we got it in. So we finished January and into February at least 7,000 every single day. I'm like, I'm not going to lose this one. Because the thing is, I could wake up the next day and feel amazing and be like, shit. Like
Yeah.
I could have just toughed it through. Which
Right.
I did. I actually felt better the next morning and the majority of the next day. And I'm wondering if it's because I did do that. Like movement is medicine, right?
Yeah.
Like I should get up and move around instead of just being stuck here, not watching Dexter all day, which is exactly what I did. So I am glad, and even not feeling well, we'll count that as a workout. Still, I've never done a workout and been like, I regret doing that. Like
Yep.
afterwards, I was like, I went to bed right after, and I think it helped me get right to sleep because I was tired after it because it was harder steps than normal, and I'm like, I'm so glad I did that, and then I conked out. So yeah, there's even when you're sick, you just gotta move, Miguel. You just gotta get up
Yep.
and move. So well, we have an article to read and discuss. What brought you to this article here?
I think it popped up in my email.
Oh,
Um, but just as the open was coming up, I always think I don't know that there's some like tips and things to note as the open comes up, just for classes and members. I know for me, like when I was strictly doing CrossFit, the way that I looked at the open was a lot. It was very different from how I approached like everyday class, I would say.
Uh-huh. And explain that, like how you viewed it more as like sport and like you're gonna put it all out there versus class being a little more reserved.
Yeah, I would say not that I wasn't like going hard in classes, but for me, it was like, oh, the open is my competition for the year.
Hmm.
Like I'm on a leaderboard, I'm doing things this way. Like I almost like took a lot of my choice out of it. Whereas you can kind of adjust any class workout. You can adjust open workouts as well, but you can adjust a class workout if you're like, maybe I'll go 10 pounds under what RX is,
Yeah.
or 5 pounds, whatever. But the open is kind of just like RX, or here is the next scaling option. It is this or this. So yeah, just the approach, and with the open coming up on how different people look at it, and what might be different for a regular class goer versus what they might see in videos coming up or at the games. Yeah, just the differences.
That is the thing too. Like especially like when you're new, you're a regular class goer. So many things are on the internet now, and you might see people doing things in like during the open, as example, and you're like, "Oh, is that how I should be doing it?" And it's like, well, that's not always the case, on how you should be doing it. Because what you might be seeing might not be, it might be just that moment where that person's giving themselves no choice because it's a competition or the sport aspect. Or maybe they do that all the time and it's not going to be sustainable, or, it's always good to put things into context when you see them out there.
Right.
So the article, CrossFit for Health and Fitness versus CrossFit for Points, it was written by Stéphane Rocher. I'm assuming that's how you say last name. And it was posted to the CrossFit website on January 29th of this year. I'll get us started with this first little paragraph, and then you can read rep and tempo. So this little introduction is observing CrossFit Games athletes at a competition can be a valuable learning experience. We can glean insights into their warm up, cool down, and pacing techniques, which are generally effective and efficient. However, it's important to recognize the significant differences between how we approach training for general fitness and health and what we observe in high level competitive athletes. Question for you, Miguel. Is there a stigma, or do you think people get too in the weeds when comparing the two on like, training for general health and fitness uh, doesn't seem as sexy or in the cool zone of as training, for high level competition kind of a deal?
It's tough because I feel like we also get mixed messages from the organization itself, you know,
Yeah,
um, where, there's this idea that it is the same for everyone. Um, the only difference is like your skill level, right? Where, like CrossFit doesn't get easier. You just go faster or you go heavier. Um, and then there is sometimes where, yeah, I think it's impossible to look at the sport of CrossFit and look at a class and say that it's the same. And I think it's can be sometimes a mistake to look at it as the same.
yeah,
Um,
I,
yeah,
I agree. And then it's also confusing, like when you have someone new joining the gym. I know there's a lot of gyms out there that they just refer to CrossFit as a sport. Like, well, here's how we train for the sport type of a deal. But we're not. It's it is a sport, but it's also not a sport. I don't think in the definition of it, the sport is even mentioned. It's a general physical preparedness program, a GPP, strength and conditioning. So it kind of gets like the waters get very, very muddied out there on like, well, all right, you're coming in, we're training for sport. Now I want you to be an athlete and I want you to do better in the open and I want you to do these competitions. Meanwhile, you just wanted to join just to be able to play with your kids and just have a healthier life and more energy and stuff. You thought you were training for fitness and health, but then you come in and maybe the gym is like, the open,
Right.
reps, no rep, blah blah blah, and then it gets crazy because it just gets so yeah, like you said, we get mixed messages, and at times it does feel like there's two camps up in CrossFit, and there's the sport aspect of it, and then there's the methodology aspect of it,
Right.
and they sometimes do seem at odds on like what the message coming out is. So that could be confusing for the consumer, right? Or the
Yep.
people out there coming in.
All
Let's
right.
see here.
Yeah.
Okay, rep and tempo.
I'll read the whole rep tempo thing, and then we can break down that one specifically.
Got it.
In competition, the name of the game is going as fast as you can. Athletes crank out the eccentric or down portion and concentric up portion phases of each rep as fast as possible with no pause in between phases or reps. This is something we should all do at times as long as we're maintaining solid, safe technique. But this should not be how we operate all the time. Generally, when training for sport, general fitness, or a physically demanding job such as a soldier, firefighter, or police officer, the majority of our reps should have a smooth, somewhat controlled eccentric phase that transitions immediately into an explosive concentric phase with a brief pause to reset for the next rep to help us preserve technique. For example, in the back squat, we lower the weight smoothly to the bottom position and then we drive our feet into the ground to stack back up as fast as possible, to stand back up as fast as possible. With heavy weight, the stand won't be fast, but it's the effort to move the bar fast that counts. Then we incorporate a short pause. This may be less than a second to ensure we are in the proper position for the next rep. If you're wondering how this style of rep will impact your time in a Metcon, the answer is minimal. Your reps might be a touch slower, but will probably be more efficient. In any case, most of the opportunity for improving our time in a workout comes from decreasing the number of and length of rest breaks. Emphasizing the benefits of the slower rep tempo and isometric holds, which are excellent training methods for building strength and refining technique, is crucial. Competitive athletes use these methods regularly to improve their skills, their fitness, and skills. It's important to note, however, that the rep speed in competition is only one method for executing a movement and should not constitute how we perform the majority of our reps when training for general fitness and health.
Agreed. Definitely agreed. Um, you know, I guess are we looking at this article on like the everyday athlete, or are we looking at like someone just starting CrossFit, the everyday athlete, and competitive people when we're kind of discussing this?
I think it's for all. Because I mean, I look at it for how it applies to me. I would say is it is different. There is a training and there is a sport. I think it's the same when we do weightlifting. Um, we always go for squat snatches and squat clean and jerks when we're training. But if on meet day, all you can do is power and that's what's working for you, that's what you're going to do because it's competition.
Yeah, do what you
Um,
can.
yeah. And I mean, as long as like what we're looking for is what passes, right? So as long as you're fully locked out and things like that, then a good rep is a good rep. Um, Same thing here. I mean, if you're bouncing up and down and it's not controlled for certain people that's not going to be more efficient just because you're going fast. And they said something interesting here where for most people, your rep speed isn't what's going to save you time all that much on the workout. It's minimizing those rest breaks. So if you're really a person who's like taking all these rest breaks, then maybe your rep tempo isn't something that you should even be focusing on at this point.
Yeah.
Um, I think the higher in level that you get, where you feel like you're maximizing efficiency in most aspects, that's when you can then begin to kind of not cut corners, but yeah, almost in a sense.
Yeah, and that makes sense for like someone like you, and then for maybe more of the everyday athlete or someone brand new starting out, they don't need to do those fast bounces or have such a fast eccentric down portion and then an even faster, concentric portion. They don't have a base or foundation of strength to build that off of yet. So if you're trying to teach them to do these back squats and go very, very fast, well, that could open the door to injury because of their tendons and their muscles and their mobility and flexibility. And that's why those slower tempos are good. Teach them how to control and get strong through the range of motion first,
Yeah.
and then use the isometric holds, even when it's just with a barbell, like you're leading three people through a progression, you tell everyone to squat down. Their whole That's a static isometric hold when they're all at the bottom, and you're seeing some athlete can't barely survive it with just the barbell. Well, then that lets us know we've got some weak points to bring up,
Yeah.
and adding more weight, or a faster rep tempo, uh, definitely might not help for that if they have no control or awareness or strength in some of those positions. So, yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's like who you're working with and what are their goals. Like if we go back to what we were talking before about sport versus health and fitness, what's the message? Well, it also helps if you know what the goals of everybody in your class is. Like might have Miguel in there, and you're like, this is the year that I'm going to go hard in CrossFit, and I want to qualify for the CrossFit Games. All right, Miguel's switching focus, but we know he's got the foundation of strength and technique and capacity that we'll build off of. And then you have other people who are like, what is the CrossFit Games? I have no idea. You know, okay, and I don't care. I just want to be a better police officer or firefighter, and I need to also be able to do those jobs well. And I don't want you to hurt me. I just need to be fit. Okay, completely different approach. Like there's going to be a lot of carryover, but would you say completely different approach a little bit?
Yeah,
Same workout, but we can still go about this a little differently.
exactly. Yeah. And yeah, I think once we get to the end, we'll talk to that a little bit more as well of just like what are we looking for when we do the open or other CrossFit competitions throughout the year.
Yeah. So that was rep tempo, range of motion. CrossFit competitions do an excellent job of defining the required range of motion for every movement. We can use these requirements as guidelines in our training. However, we should not limit the range of motion to the competition standard if the range is available. For example, the competition standard for squatting movements requires the athlete to start in a standing position with legs and hips fully extended and descend to where the crease of the hips is below the top of the knee before standing back up. When competing, athletes will not descend any further than a bottom position where the crease of the hip is just below the top of the knees. That's perfectly acceptable and is a fine range of motion to begin with. However, when training for general fitness, we want to work through this greater range of motion if we have the mobility and flexibility to travel 2 to 3 inches lower than the standard while preserving proper positions. This makes our reps slower, but the capacity, flexibility, and mobility built through the range of motion are worth it. There are also instances where athletes employ methods to ensure judges clearly see the range of motion requirement is met and the rep is counted. One example is thrusting the head forward on overhead movements such as thrusters, presses, or jerks to eliminate the impression the barbell is left out in front, which risk a no rep. Another example is an exaggerated lean back toward the top of the deadlift to ensure the judge recognizes the athlete has fully extended the hips. We should not copy these tactics in our training. Such movement is only potentially beneficial in the context of a competition and can be harmful if performed regularly. Definitely agree. I like that line right there, Miguel. Only potentially beneficial in the context of a competition. How many times have we seen in like a regular CrossFit class where everyone is like performing the general workout of the day with standards from competition to try to get the best score possible, but that also may not lead to the best fitness and health possible, which in turn, if you did do it that way, would lead one hopefully to the best performance in competition possible.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like this this weird zigzag.
Like it can't hurt to do things like genuinely for me, I would have to train to only squat to just about below parallel.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't really benefit me all that much to change up the way that I squat something in a workout all the time just because I know that that's what the competition standard is. Or like the standards change. Handstand push-ups. You might have a box in the open where your hands can go. You might have a line. You might not have any of those. Wall walks. It might not be taped off in the way that it usually was. So if you just go to competition standard every time, you're also leaving yourself open to what if the standard gets a little bit harder.
Yeah.
I can only do handstand push-ups if my fingertips are all the way at the end of that box. Then if you go somewhere else and you need to perform a handstand push-up under a more strict standard, you can't do any.
The handstand push-up is the perfect example because of how many times they've changed the standard and
Right.
everyone always gets upset. And we've seen it in our gym where people have their hands as wide as possible and they're just doing this for the handstand push-ups. It's like you could even argue you don't have handstand push-ups if this is the only way
Right.
you
Yeah.
can do it out there. But what, like if you were to train it and get it really, your technique tight and your strength through the full range of motion and get the flexibility to be able to do that, you're going to be so much better off. You're going to have so many more degrees of freedom in your strength and technique and the way you can express all of that if you just do it the right way. It's kind of like building up your strict strength, right? If you have a foundation of strict pull-ups and you can do those really well and you really work up the capacity and strength to do them, you're going to be in a lot better position than someone who only has pull-ups because they can kip.
Right.
And didn't that pop up at a workout or a competition a few years back, Wadapalooza? They did strict pull-ups and everybody was having a hard time with that.
I can't remember, but yeah, potentially.
And then people are watching it and they're like, "That's not even a strict pull-up," because they they can't help but swing their
Right.
head
Yeah.
and do it. It's like they can't even do it. So yeah, I think training the range of motion keeps you healthy. Um, and we have seen our nightmare scenarios of people who only want to use the tail end of the range of motion that's required in competition. I remember we had a period at the gym where because it was allowed in the open, where you could build the men's weight using a 35-pound bar. Some guys were like, well, that's easier on the grip. Now I only ever want to use that bar. But
Mm,
it's like, well, if you use, I guess, the thicker bar, that's going to give you better grip strength. And then
right.
if you just train with that overall, now if, okay, they allow you to do it in the open and you can use your 35-pound bar now, you'll be better off from it. But uh, people don't want to do that. They only want to do I guess this is back to only wanting to do the sport because they start to view it too much as a sport
Yeah.
and not as a training methodology. All right. Any other thoughts on range of motion?
No, no, I think we covered it there. But
We
yeah,
shouldn't copy it. You should definitely practice it though, in certain situations.
yeah,
I'm trying to think of an example. There have been times where like when an open retest has come up where I'm like, this is how you could do this. Let's practice it today, try it. But like this isn't how you always want to do this type of
right.
a deal. I'm trying to think. I don't have a good example off the top of my head. But whenever those open workouts pop up, that's when you can kind of sneak in different things,
Yeah.
or even teaching like back to like pacing. We don't always want to use open wad or competitive pacing on things. There should at least be one day of the week where you like just completely bam, just go crazy. And other days that are going to be a little more measured, and other days maybe a little more quote strategic. But you don't always want to be in a situation where you're like, all right, I can only get through this by if I chop up the reps 777 because
Yeah.
statistically that will get me the best time. How about you just hold on to it and just start doing cleans
Hmm.
until you can't anymore? Benefits to both. So that would kind of be like one example on like, hey, break it up this way or do singles versus most of the time we should try to hold on to the bar or even like the burpee to the pull-up bar like hey you can do this with a 5 count so
Yeah.
like having class practice a 5 count like 1 2 3 and by the time you get to 5 you're jumping up okay now let's see if you can speed up that tempo can you do it with a 4 count a 3 count what one is the most sustainable for you that will keep you moving without stopping and getting all 25 reps in a row. But like, I think there's definitely a time and a place for that. Not every day, but whenever an open workout comes up, I think that's a good time.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on range of motion?
Nope.
All right, you're on for technique.
All right. Competitive CrossFit athletes generally display excellent technique. Sound technique is more efficient and effective and allows for better performance overall. However, driven by their placement on the leaderboard, there are instances where these athletes sacrifice technique and see what they can get away with in hopes of getting better time or lifting a heavier load. Examples include bouncing off the chest in push ups, reaching with the chin at the top of a pull up, bouncing the weights in deadlifts, bouncing hard off of the trailing knee at the bottom of a lunge, or driving off the trailing leg in step ups. Outside of competition, these technique deviations reduce the training effect we're striving to achieve from the movement patterns we've selected, thereby compromising the quality of our results. As we add load to a movement and approach our or nudge past our previous records, it is not uncommon for our technique to break down. As we watch CrossFit athletes in competition fight for points in heavy events, we'll see instances, even among the very best, where knees collapse in on heavy squats or backs round severely on heavy deadlifts. These athletes are compromising safety in hopes of securing the desired result. This is not what training should look like in the gym. When training for general fitness, maximal reps should look like sub maximal reps, just at a slower bar speed. The load should be decreased as soon as minor faults appear that cannot be corrected. If major faults occur, there should be an understanding that the athlete went too heavy. These instances should be avoided or at least minimized in training.
I was during that lunch workout on Friday. I was told one of my classes, I'm like, we we should not hear your back knee hitting the floor on
Yeah,
every rep. But you'll see people do stuff like that, like it says here in competition, and it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it to have you know almost everybody do some of this stuff. The bouncing the chest and the push-ups. I don't know why that reminded me of Mike because he has aggressive push-ups. Or just bouncing the weights in deadlifts, just essentially just not doing the movement right, um, and potentially hurting yourself. It's not worth it. Like even I think even for like look for me, I'm signed up for the open. I'm going to do a competition, right? Is it worth it for me to hurt myself in this competition that it's not going to the next stage? I'm just doing it. I'm just doing it for fun, right? It's I don't know like for me and the athletes that I have and that we have, I don't know. I guess would you say this is worth it just the games or you're about to qualify for the games?
I think that's up to you. The reality is a lot of us aren't, none of us are making the games, right? So
Yeah.
what is your games? I think it's relative to the person, right? So I'm okay. I guess this is my idea of like what is a good workout versus, a good score in the open. If you
Yeah.
RX a workout and you get 1 rep, your score automatically is above every other scaled person, right? So let's say I don't have 100 toes to bar, but I can get my toe to touch the bar 4 times throughout this workout. Is it worth it for me to do that? Maybe I do it at with the group in the class, scaled, and then the score that I put on the leaderboard is one that I do by myself or just with my judge, and I get those 4 toes to bar, and that's it. Um,
Yeah, I think that's definitely worth it. I think if you're folded over on a deadlift and your disc is about to go, I think it's also okay for someone to step in and be like, Miguel, stop.
yeah,
Like we can go. I understand you're signed up for the open, but those spots on the leaderboard aren't worth what's about to happen or could happen. You know,
yeah, yeah.
because
I do
we do
think
have people who the open is their personal games. So it's
right.
like you gotta measure that too. On like, okay, I understand this. You paid money to do this, all that stuff, but you didn't pay money like you tomorrow if you're laid up and you can't move or sit up and you're getting an MRI on your back, you didn't pay for that either. You did that, you took it there, but that's not what we want either.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think even if someone makes the open or any like little small in-house or whatever competition their personal games, there still has to be like a voice of reason within it. That's why you're there as a coach, you know, to be like, hey, like or like let's say if we're at a weightlifting meet and like it's like, hey, we shouldn't take that next attempt. Like let's scratch it.
Hmm.
I think we did that with one of Haley's clean and jerk attempts, right? Where it's like this wasn't happening anymore. Didn't it happen to the Arnold? I forget.
Mm,
Trying to
I don't.
remember.
I don't believe so.
Yeah. Either way, at some point you got to be you got to throw in the towel, right?
Yeah.
It's like Rocky Four. He should have thrown in the towel. Apollo never would have forgave him, but he should have thrown in the towel because Apollo would have lived, right?
Hey, it all depends on
Is this the
who you
Rocky
are.
Four situation? This is the Rocky Four situation. Like you got the white towel on your hand. You
I
know,
mean, yeah, there are moments. I think with this it's different just because of where everyone is. But
yeah,
yeah, I do think there are times where it's like. Also, depending on who it is, I think athletes know themselves and they already know that risk going in.
yeah.
That's how I always felt kind of going into open workouts as well. It was like, oh, I don't really need this brief as much as everybody else does. Like, I've been looking at this workout for the past 2 days. I've seen all the videos come out. I like know what I'm doing already. Like I know where this can go wrong for me. I know blah blah blah. Um,
Which I
but
think that's a good thing to
yeah,
like do your research and like if you're doing a sport or like be invested in it like that. Like come in armed with knowledge.
but yeah, I think it's person to person. But overall, yeah, there are moments where I think this is kind of like the CrossFit counting CrossFit kind of comes in, right? Where
Yeah. Well, I think
yeah, you
I'm
can
injecting a third person in this paragraph, and
right,
that's the
right.
coach perspective, um, versus like training for health, like the athlete. There's two athletes in this paragraph. There's the general fitness one, then there's the competitive one, and we don't want the general fitness one to be people to be training like this all the time. This is not how we want to be training. And I'm kind of inserting the third coach aspect of it
Right.
here.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, there's like a jerk where in CrossFit you'll see people pressing out a little bit more often, but that's because they're like fighting for those reps each time. Whereas for me as a weightlifter, it's hard to not just drop something when I feel myself starting to press.
Yeah.
So I mean, like there are times and moments where, if you're towards the tail end of a workout and you're towards failure, to like keep pressing through, and maybe your technique isn't perfect, but you're still able to get the rep. Um, yeah, moments like that. But overall, we want to be able to do that weight and that good technique as much as we can. But there is a time for when we can probably go past that a little bit.
Yeah. And if you're in an open workout, okay, you're going to explore those weights and stuff. I like how it says here in this technique paragraph, when training for general fitness, maximal reps should look like submaximal reps, just at slower bar speed. The load should be decreased as soon as minor faults appear that cannot be corrected. So that's an important two sentences right there. And that's something that we should always be doing, when we're coaching our classes. uh, Athletes will see the weights on the board and be like, I have to do that. Like whatever was written on the board. Oh, I feel less if I don't do that. Or they have coming in, maybe just like you were thinking about the workout all day for the open, they saw that it was 5x5 back squat. They know their PR is 100 and they have 125 in their head. They're like, oh man, it would make my life so much better. Or I have this dream that I've been thinking about all day. I've been obsessed about it all day to come in and beat that number. And then when you're working with them, maybe for whatever reason they're tired, they haven't eaten well, whatever, they haven't done it in a while. They just don't got it that day, and you have to be the one to be like, yeah, hey, we're not going to go up to 125 today, Miguel. Like it's just meeting people's expectations and like not squashing it, but make sure they understand. And also, but doing that too, like the load should be decreased as soon as minor faults can't be corrected. If you're coaching me and you're like, hey James, we got to get those knees going out or whatever, my knees are slapping together on every squat, and then I can't do it, you're gonna let me go up?
Yeah, probably not.
Then we have to have that conversation. But what if it means a lot to me though? This is my personal games today, Miguel. To add another 5 pounds, I you ever be in class when like right away someone in class is like telling the whole class about, man, I can't wait to hit this weight today or something like that. You ever been in a class like that where someone's
Yeah, and I mean,
talking it up?
even when it's like, oh, go across the room and grab something, and then somebody goes, what's the RX weight? And I go, what were you going to grab?
Yeah,
Because it shouldn't matter what you thought the RX weight is or what the RX weight is. What do you know that you're capable of doing?
yeah. And making sure people understand that we're training, we're not testing necessarily all the time. And I know that can be hard, like with movements like back squats and stuff. We just had a back squat workout on Thursday that it was 5x5 at a given weight across, not climbing. On those days, I would tell people, hey, today's a day where we're training the back squat. We're not testing the back squat. So you're going to find this one weight and we're going to settle in with it and we're going to hit it. And those workouts, in many ways, are harder than the workouts where you just get to keep building up.
Yep.
Look at in Barbell Club, we have two polar opposite days. We have one day on Monday where it's 5x5 stuck at one weight versus the end of the week where it's just building up to something that's a lot heavier than what we did on Monday, but it's just one build up through. Those are two completely different days,
Yeah.
like on how they feel. It's harder to do the 70% 5x5 day. It's a much harder day. It'd be easier if you could add weight every time and then maybe you start making excuses on like, well, I missed that, but because it got harder, like it got heavier, versus just staying there, just getting to know 70% really well. That's hard. So yeah, that's just a reminder that the load should be decreasing as soon as minor faults appeared, and they can't be corrected. It's a great sentence.
Yeah.
Diet. Refueling with candy or soda. Oh gosh. I instantly thought of Barbell Club when I saw this. Refueling with candy or soda is purely a competition tactic. CrossFit Games athletes use gummy bears or sugary drinks as tasty, easily ingested, and absorbed sources of carbohydrates to refuel after an event and prepare for the next intense workout. However, this strategy does not support our health and fitness. With no rush to replenish our glycogen stores, we can rely on whole, unprocessed foods like fruits, sweet potatoes, and raw honey to refuel. This is another thing I think gets confused with just the messaging out there. Not necessarily by CrossFit HQ, but I remember when all of the supplements, like remember Fuel for Fire, the little
Hmm.
pack,
Yeah.
like all those things started to come out, and then the athletes are getting sponsored. They're sponsoring the event, and then you have everybody taking stuff that in their normal training and everyday lives, or as a snack that they didn't need to do. Um, versus eating whole foods. Do you
Yeah.
remember that when that was a whole? It seemed like it used to be bigger, like around 2015 to 2019 is when like there was a big boom on all these things you can buy.
Yeah. And there's even like, I mean, it depends on what sport you're doing, but like endurance athletes have their things, right? Where they do like goos and these caffeine, like little gummy blocks. That's what they are. The caffeine blocks. So for each sport, it's different. That's why I think like in barbell club, it's like we're doing different pieces at like high intensity across, like 2 hours. So the fueling intra workout is different than like the layout of a 1 hour CrossFit class. Um,
And some of y'all haven't eaten all day, and or drank water all day, um, and or the workouts are grueling, and you need a little treat to get through
yeah,
it. So have a gummy bear so you feel good, and then yeah, go do that other set of 5 squats because it's like we're in the dungeon. We're in a it doesn't look like one, but we're in a dark dungeon, and weightlifting beats you down, and it's just the repetition, or you just missed a lift or missed another lift for a second time in a row. All right, have a Sour Patch Kid. Feel good about yourself. Now go try to make it again. I think there's a psychological component to our treats as well.
yeah, yeah, I think so.
All the bars, right? Replacing Whole Foods with all the protein bars, the paleo
Hmm.
bars, all that stuff that came out. All of a sudden, paleo is the big thing, but now do paleo as easily as possible in these these gel packs and bars and stuff. It's like, all right, is it even paleo anymore? Like, we've chopped up and ground up all the whole foods, so you can just suck it down and not have to do any work. Come on,
Right.
like I don't see this one, outside of our. I mean, barbell club's different. I don't really see this one as a problem anymore. Um, do you?
Yeah, no, I don't think.
At least in our gym.
Yeah, I don't think we have anyone doing like trying to do like double sessions or anything, and like most people are just hitting class and then doing their thing. I mean, Mike has his whole caffeine addiction, but you know,
Yeah.
for the most part,
Mike is a different human being.
yeah,
He can eat things in quantities that I don't think anyone else in the gym can, actually. Um, a lot of cheesecake. All right. Pushing through injury.
it is not uncommon for athletes to push through pain and injury during a competition. Torn tendons, muscles, or ligaments, or broken bones will not deter the most determined competitors. This perseverance is often seen as an admirable trait in a competitive setting. However, this is not a wise or recommended practice for the average affiliate athlete. With a long term view of building fitness and health over a lifetime, we need to listen to our bodies and not let minor aches and tweaks become full blown injuries that require us to take weeks or months off. Discomfort is different from pain. Training brings much discomfort, but should not bring pain and damage to tissues and joints. It's essential to know the difference and err on the side of caution by decreasing volume, working around a potential issue, getting treatment, and focusing on rest and recovery as needed. There is no reason to push ourselves until we break. CrossFit Games athletes have much to share with us as long as we understand the context that defines why and how they do things. They are trying to win and secure prize money and sponsorships. Their focus is not on long term health and fitness. Knowing this, we need to know which methods will help us pursue fitness and health, and which should primarily be reserved for high level competition and rarely implemented by general fitness enthusiasts.
Yep. Never need to hurt yourself doing this. CrossFit's safe. You know, when done right, it should be safe. You should leave the gym, of course, tired and sweaty and like you did something, but there's no need to redline it every day or push past, you know, aches or pains that could potentially get worse, or even like push past psychological things that you're not ready for. See people do that too. And it's just there's no rush to do any of that. I think sometimes people get a thing in their head where they're like, I have to do it all now, you know, and I have to come in every single day and not let my body rest and recover. And it's like you said earlier, like people know themselves, but I think a lot of people who say they know themselves really don't know themselves
Mm-hmm.
because they haven't like pushed at some kind of like this type of intensity level. And that's when they like kind of get like rocked back on like they're like, no, I'll be able to take it 7 days a week, and then a week and a half of that in, and their body's falling apart, and they're all dragged down, and they're like, they thought they could take it, but they really can't. Like,
Right.
there is no cheating it. Like, you can't cheat the physiology of it, and you can't treat just the total compounding workload out of it. But it's amazing because people think they can.
Yeah.
That's the ego part of it, right?
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, yeah, I mean, we talked about like people in their personal games and different things. I mean, I competed through a pulled hamstring, but I mean, like I knew that we took rest as we needed um for a couple weeks, and then but it was a competition, which is the reason that it continued. Like I wouldn't have just decided to lift through it without it being a competition. I think without even if medals weren't on the line, right? Like if I knew like, oh, there's no shot that I'm getting on the podium, I don't think I'm competing because I don't think that that's worth it. But for me, knowing that there was still the shot there, still going for it. But on like a day to day with a pulled hamstring, I'm not gonna risk it anymore because then what's the point? Like then it never heals.
Yeah. And you had taken days off. We had modified training. We had to do a lot of trial and error to figure out what we were going to be able to do.
Right.
And like, if this, then that, if that, then this type of a deal. So it was well monitored, you know. Um, but even just with someone coming in just to do CrossFit, um, people want things fast. So like go back to like the person that you were mentioning before coming in doing 2 days, you know, they're like, oh, well, like for people, more always seems like the better option, even though like less is more. Everyone has heard that, right? Like less is more.
Yep.
Yet I feel like believing it is a whole other thing when you don't realize that like, hey, you're gonna be doing this training for a long time. It's not like you're gonna do a crash course do it for 30 days and then you'll never need to do it again. And you would have gotten all the benefits you possibly could have. It's like, no, you're starting this activity. The thought process is you're now training for health and fitness over a lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
which means you kind of keep doing it and you learn more new skills and increase your capacity to do things, and you're going to use CrossFit to make it so that you can go hiking with your friends and not be feel out of shape or not be able to not do it because you have that foundation of fitness versus doing CrossFit and not being able to go hiking because you're beat up from CrossFit or you're injured from CrossFit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Second one doesn't seem worth it to me. Or hey, your knees hurt because you're not having a good tempo. You're trying to train like a games athlete or do squats in a competitive way, and now we're going to keep doing back squats. Like maybe we should rebuild that a little bit.
Yeah.
You remember? Yeah, I think you took on ramp with me, right?
Yep.
Do you remember the when I it was always before the handstand push-ups where I would explain to them that you will see people doing handstand push-ups and other movements a certain way, and you have to understand that what you see on TV or on YouTube and whatnot, the games athletes, things like that, like they're doing it to win and also for money and fame and accolades and all that stuff. Do you remember that speech?
Uh, no, honestly, I
It
don't.
was a long time ago, but I used to explain this in on ramp. I'm like, hey, we step off the box, we don't jump off the box. You might see some guy on TV jumping off the box. His Achilles tendon could explode at any moment. He is doing that because he wants to win the money and the prize and the fame at the end of the line there. But I would also compare it to football. When a guy goes up to catch the ball, does he know that there's a very large man behind him or multiple that as soon as he touches that ball, they're going to try to kill him? He knows that. He's assuming the risk. He's perfectly okay with it. He knows that if he gets hit the wrong way, it could change his life in a very negative way forever, right? That's not what we're doing here. We never want to take risks like that. We don't want it to be so that you have to get a reconstruction surgery and change something for forever because of what we're doing here. We're doing CrossFit to complement your life and to enhance your life, not to take away from it. And unfortunately, the sport aspect of it can complement your life and add to it. But there's certainly an easy way to go down the wrong path, right?
Yep.
To where it does the opposite, especially if you let it take over your training and you're always you're always scrimmaging or doing the sport aspect of it. You're always competing and you're never training, right? Like
Yep.
at some point, if you're going to do your pickup basketball games, that's competition, right? With a group of friends, but you should probably practice outside of it. I don't know. Do people even do that? They probably just play games, right?
It depends. I mean, yeah, some people still, you got to work on like your shots and you got to work on different things. But yeah, I would say that that's different because I mean, people also aren't, depending on the person, but like aren't going 100% on like a pickup basketball game. Like they're not
Yeah.
diving as the ball is going out of bounds to like try to save it. Like a championship isn't on the line. Like it's different. I feel like that's like, yeah, that's kind of like scaling it, where it's like, yeah, this is the game, the sport, but I'm not at that level where it's like money isn't on the line here.
But I'm sure people who do pick up basketball games, they know that guy who does treat it like it's a championship
Yeah.
game, right? So that guy exists out there, and essentially, this article is saying a little bit is like, don't be that guy, like because that guy he's also wearing the knee brace. He's also maybe he rubs people the wrong way, and he might burn out after a while. Have you ever met that guy in one of those sports implement
Yeah.
things?
In any
Have you
sport.
been that guy?
Um, I would say no. It
That's good.
depends. I think basketball is different just because I have no actual skill in basketball. So all my everything goes into playing like aggressive defense.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, no, I'm not like geared out. Like you can tell I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But you've seen, quote, that guy.
for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, don't be that guy. I think this is a good reminder before the open, on what people should be doing and year round. If you want to get better for the open, then do the things in this article that are opposite of like the quote the game's technique. We'll just call it that. Have a solid tempo and use those static positions and build a strong foundation of strength. Of course, take advantage and grow your range of motion, and don't just cut things short or use ranges of motion that would just let you skate by getting reps done quicker or just meet the judging requirements. Even with the technique thing, on no need to lean back on your deadlifts. I remind people all the time, like, hey, you don't need to lean that far back, you know. But they may have seen it on TV. So like all of a sudden what you see people doing in competition, that becomes the standard for everybody, you know. And I think that's something we should watch out for as coaches, on not coaching people for the open, coaching the athlete and coaching the movement the way it should be done, right?
Right.
And then don't eat like a games athlete and don't push through injury. This is great advice, that if you did this year round, when the open actually comes up, I find it hard to see why you wouldn't be better than the open the year before, right?
Yeah.
It's a nice simple recipe uh, to do better the previous year, and then of course practice your sucks. Like if you're not good at double unders now, you have a whole year to do that. Good article. I like that one. I like them all. Was there anything else, Miguel, you wanted to say about that article there?
Yeah. I guess just to like wrap it up, like the games athletes that we see have kind of maximized their efficiency in everything else, and kind of cutting these corners are the final aspect of that. So they can do everything that we can in class to the best form, the slower rep speed, and still be faster than us because they're just at that level. So we shouldn't want to jump to their end result without getting everything that led to it, I would say.
Yeah, and you we don't have the opportunity to. I mean, some of them are just gifted, right? Like these are
Yeah.
the outliers, the freak athletes out there. They just woke up and did a muscle up with one hand, like, oh, that's how you do it. But you also don't see, them meal prepping. You don't see them waking up at 4 a.m. and all that work that's done outside of the competition floor. So when you do see them doing things like taking the handstand grip as wide as the standard will allow it, you didn't see all the shoulder circles they did in the back warm up room, the band work, all that stuff to make that happen. And for some of them, they do prioritize full range of motion and tight technique. And then on competition day, or when they are testing, they'll take it to the limits of the standard. But you don't see any of that stuff. You don't
Right.
see the behind the scenes things. You just assume that's what you should be doing if you want to be like them. Which really, it's like, if you want to be like them, all right, well, is your meals in Tupperware? Are you cooking up your broccoli? Are you going to do all that? Are you going to wake up extra early? Are you carrying around a jug to stay hydrated? Are you booking massage sessions? Are you spending an hour on Ramwad or whatever it is? All that boring stuff, they're doing all that boring stuff. And that's not the sexy stuff. And that's why you don't see it on on the live stream, but that's what you need to do as well.
Yeah.
Do you hear that?
Slightly.
The fire alarm is going off right now.
Oh,
But yeah, I will not be leaving. Nope. Show me there's a real fire, and then I will get out of here. because it is too cold, wet, and slushy out there, and I am not. Yeah, so we're here. Miguel, what was the next thing on the agenda here?
No, that was it.
That was it. Okay. All right. Cool. Well, we did it. Look at that. Another podcast down. The first one for February. I don't know what we're talking about next week. Hopefully, some fencing. And we have some testing in the barbell club going on this week. We're going to test some of the strength lifts. Some heavy front squats and heavy back squats will be going down. So, are you ready for that?
Hopefully.
It's just let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
We've been doing a lot of it. We'll see how far we can push towards the upper limits. And again, it's one of those things. It changes day to day. It's hard to pinpoint the right day, right, on when this might work. We have it on the calendar. We're going to build up to a heavy 3 on the front squat this coming Wednesday. But I have no idea the state of all of you come Wednesday. What might happen? You caught a cold, didn't eat, didn't sleep, still recovering from Monday. Are we still going to do 5x5 back squat on Monday? Yes. So it's just one of those things, I don't think there's any perfect way to do it. The only perfect way to do it is where you guys would be like, hey, today is the day. It is my perfect day. I feel amazing. Let me do it today. But then, even still, then you're not guaranteed.
Yeah.
It's just not guaranteed. That's just the thing about testing. Cool. Awesome. Well, good conversation, Miguel. Good article. We will meet again next week. Where can people follow you?
On Instagram at Couldn't Be Miguel.
Couldn't be Miguel. There's some new pictures up there on Instagram, and it was noted Schaff made the page.
He did.
He made the page. He mentioned it on Friday. We were all happy for him. It's quite the accomplishment.
Yeah.
And also, John dropped in on Friday.
Oh, nice.
Yep, he was in town, so he lifted with us on Friday. So that was a nice surprise for everybody. I was like, every time someone does one of these surprise visits,
Yeah, I'm not there.
yeah. And I noticed that this time. I'm like, how does that always happen? That when Miguel is out, somehow that's when someone's going to be popping in. It always
Right.
happens that way. It's so funny. Except for Cat, you always catch Cat.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, Miguel, follow me, James A. McDermott. Follow Albany CrossFit, Albany CrossFit Barbell Club, the Barbell Strikes Back, all those things, or not. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again very soon.